Hey! No worries. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another race. Second day of the 46 Robot Master Tournament. I should have a pretty good one here. Got Hypa and Primal, both a couple of Europeans in the tournament. Most of the runners, I think, are from North America, so it's cool to see a couple of the other runners from across the pond playing now. Hypa is actually a pretty established runner in both Mega Man 4 and a little bit in 5. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does through some of these earlier games and 6 at the end, and how he can maintain maybe some of his play through the ones he does know. And Primal, obviously, he's been speedrunning for a long time now. He knows these games in and out pretty much of how they were, a few years ago, and so a lot of that stuff you don't forget a whole lot, and so it's going to be interesting to see sort of who can sort of keep their play going here. I'm curious. Hypa is going with Guts first here, which is a little bit easier because you don't have to worry about the Magnet Beam grab, which is kind of nice. He had a pretty nice stage, got through it pretty much with no problems, and Primal also getting through Cut here as he's about to get to the boss fight without any issues. So both these guys starting out pretty good actually right off the bat. So but yeah, like I mentioned, Hypa's going to be able to just use the Guts weapon to get Elect Beam, whereas Primal will have to actually clip through the walls. So hopefully Primal isn't going to take too much time in doing that. One of the downfalls of Cut First is if you don't grab the Magnet Beam very fast, the route ends up being a little bit slower than actually even going Guts First. So it's a little bit of a risk, but if you're comfortable doing the grab, then definitely worthwhile. Another advantage, obviously, to Guts First is then when you get to this fight here with Cut, you actually do have Guts' weapon to grab the blocks to throw at Cut, which can make the fight, obviously, really fast. Ooh, Primal having some issues with these Elect jumps early on in the first screen. I know for probably a lot of people playing the game for the first time and casually, those jumps were kind of notorious for being a little bit of a roadblock, actually, right at the beginning. Sort of showing you that Elect stage was going to be a bit of a challenge, and the climb is not easy, that's for sure. Got a lot of these ladders with these enemies that like to hit you and knock you back down, so Elect is actually surprisingly quite a long stage because of that, because you don't really climb ladders fast in this game. So it's actually probably, I think, the longest Robot Master of this game. So you'll actually see, hopefully, oh yeah, he gets that corner jump. You'll see hopefully nobody falling, because falling in this stage can cost more time than anything else. There is a minor risk of a soft lock when Primal goes for this clip, so hopefully we don't see that happen. If he does soft lock, he'll have to reset and start again from the beginning, because there is no password in Mega Man 1, so it's really important that he does it correctly, so that he doesn't essentially give Hypa the really quick 2-stage lead. And he's in, and looks like he's out. So that was a very, very good grab. So he should save a little bit of time there on Hypa, just on the route choice. And there Hypa is showing that really fast kill with the block. Select is going to become these runners' best friends as... Ooh! Hypa getting knocked down there, unfortunately. But Select is going to become these guys' best friends, as it allows you to pause the game without actually opening the menu. But even though they hit it and pause the game, things like boss invincibility frames actually still run while the game is paused in that form. So the runners can use that to their advantage by keeping a bullet inside of the boss's hitboxes, and just by using the select button, they can keep it in place and let the iframes of the bosses wear off, and just continually sort of pause, buffer the bullets inside the hitbox. Primal taking a very, very unfortunate death right at the boss door. That's actually a pretty big time loss, because like I said, this is a very long stage. And so having to replay the second half of this stage is kind of unfortunate. He's also going to be down Magnet Beam, which means a lot of these ladders that he was able to sort of jump past before, now he's going to have to climb a lot of them, and that's going to cost quite a bit of time, because you can just see visually how much slower it is for Mega Man to climb ladders. Interesting note that even though he has it, the Magnet Beam still reappears, so you can actually get the Magnet Beam again if you really want. I think just even screen transitioning brings it back. So he still has about half his beam, so he should be able to get back. But he'll have to probably climb the entire boss corridor of Alec, which is going to be pretty costly, having to wait for the beams. Hypa's got his Magnet Beam, so he's good to go. The big eye at the end of Alec is pretty notorious for being a pretty scary thing. Like, even for me, like, I don't know the speedrun very well for this game, and so I usually try to just use my Magnet Beam to go over top of him, because I'm kind of scared I'm going to get hit and die, but the runners usually have enough health to deal with that, as you see Primal this time with that full bar of health from the checkpoint was able to get through it by taking damage. But that's not always the case, so sometimes runners have to be very careful that if they get a bad jump from the big eye, to try to avoid it. There you see Hypa going for my strat there of just trying to jump over that big eye and avoid the hit, although he did unfortunately take a hit anyway. So Primal 2 robots down now. Death costing him a little bit of time, but he is through, and he'll be able to move on now to Ice. So Hypa with this advantage slightly, as he's coming into the end of his third stage. Alec is actually a pretty scary boss fight, but again, with that select glitch, you see Hypa using it there. It makes for a pretty trivial fight. Alec, other than if you can get him stuck in sort of a loop, Alec is probably one of the scariest Buster fights in the game, along with Ice. So knowing how to manipulate that bullet shot to just keep it inside of his hitbox just shows you how much more trivial the boss fight really is. So we're going to see Primal go for a screen wrap. He's got the pixel, looks good, and should be able to get this. Mega Man 1 is filled with zips, basically, and how they work is there's a very specific pixel that you need to shoot the Magnet Beam on, and it sort of squishes Mega Man between the beam and the ceiling, and in doing so you can turn left and the game will just sort of push you to the right and zip you out. So you see these guys, they have to put their beam on a very, very exact spot so that they can get their setup to get their zips going. Hypa looked like he didn't quite have it. Oh, I actually didn't see if Primal just missed the beam there or if he died in the next screen, but he's going to have to wait for these Yoku blocks. I'm guessing he died because he's on Buster, not on Beam. So kind of unfortunate again. This is a really mean game. Mega Man 1 is probably one of the hardest of this category, so thankfully there's only 6 robots instead of 8 in this game. But yeah, having to do the Yokus is kind of annoying, but thankfully he does have one extra beam here. Hopefully he can get across to the middle of this gap, and that will allow him to pick up the refill. Ooh, that bullet is coming. Oof, kind of scary there, but he should be okay now that he's made it to the ammo. Meanwhile, Hypa not only passed him throughout this stage because of that, but also still has that full stage advantage, so if he can maintain this pace, he could be coming out of Mega Man 1 with a very sizable lead. As Iceman goes down. Yeah, that's probably a good point, Zoda. I think probably MM1 runners have a rough idea of how to do the Yokus, but since if you're a really good runner of this game, you probably almost well, you probably would never ever do the Yoku blocks, because if you messed them up, you would just reset and try again. So it's interesting to see how the runners handle that actually in the different games if there's Yoku blocks. We saw last night, we actually saw Proto struggle quite a bit with the Yoku blocks in Magnet, just because you could tell it wasn't something she had, done very much. And so runners sort of have to be kind of aware of their backup strats. It's all part of racing. Sometimes you gotta sort of roll with the mistakes and continue on, even though it's something you might not know how to do very well. Fire is a really nice stage because it has these 2 really large ammo refills for Magnet Beam. So it's actually pretty hard to run out of beam here, unless you really don't know how to do the setups for the zips, which is really nice. See, even though Hypa used a lot of beam there at the beginning of the stage, he's still got like half his beam, which is really a lot. Like, you don't need nearly that much for this setup. You only need like 4. See if you can get this zip here. It's looking good, very nice. Even selected sort of through the bullet bill so he didn't get hit there, so good job. Primal also setting up the zip right behind him. Waiting for that bullet bill. Ooh, very nice. Gets through without taking damage, so gets that sort of longer extended zip. The one major difference between Mega Man 1 and the rest of the games in this category is in all the other games, you can switch games on the boss kill. So when the boss dies, you can quickly switch to the next game. In Mega Man 1, though, you know that when the bosses die, they drop that orb from usually the middle of the room, sometimes from the right side of the room, because in Bomban, there's a door in the middle, so it actually falls to the right side. And so the runners actually have to pick that orb up before they can move on to Mega Man 2, so it's very important that they don't sort of fall asleep just because the boss fight ends. They have to get over to that orb very quickly so that they can move on to the next game. Yeah, Vlad, the Yoku blocks. I'm not actually really sure if that's an official name, but there was a fan game that came out fairly recently that a lot of people sort of took to. There was a additional Robot Master for 100% in that game called Yoku Man, and that's essentially what his stage was filled with, was those blocks. So it's just sort of, from what I understand, sort of just been dubbed Yoku blocks because of Mega Man Unlimited. I don't think that's actually their official name. I don't know if Capcom has actually said what their official name is, other than maybe just disappearing blocks. Oh, was it named that way in Legacy Collection? See, I don't have Legacy Collection, so I wasn't able to see all those really cool sort of add-ons that they had for that game, like different enemy names and stuff. Ooh, Hypa not actually doing the zip here in Bomb, so he's going to have to walk through this long screen. Thankfully, he got through the spot with the spikes, so it's just going to be a little bit slower now going to take the walk, but even with that that zip, not doing that zip, he should still have the advantage here on Primal, as Primal has those 2 deaths that are going to cost him a lot of time. He still has to go through Guts' stage, whereas this is Hypa's last one. And there again, using that select button to glitch and hold that fire shot inside a bomb, and Hypa is finished with Mega Man 1, so a very, very fast time. Mid-14 is definitely really solid time for some of these runners, especially some of them who haven't been playing this game for very long. So obviously the main difference of Guts first and Cut first is now you can see Primal's able to use Magnet Beam to cross that big gap with all those scary jumps, whereas Hypa had to ride the platforms. he actually had a kind of scary fall there. He fell off that one beam and was able to sort of land right on the platform. I don't know if that's his normal strat, but if it is, it's kind of a scary strat to do because you fall very fast in this game, especially off of Magnet Beam. And so you have to be lined up pretty precisely to make sure you're going to hit some of those drops if you're going to do them. I didn't actually see which game Hype is on. Okay, he's on normal, so Mega Man 2, the runners were given a choice whether they wanted to run on Mega Man 2 or on Rockman 2, which is basically Mega Man 2 difficult. And it looks like Hype is going to go with normal. Really, the only difference here you're going to see I don't know if Primal's going to do normal or not, but ooh, Primal's just missed the ass grab, but almost got it. But the only real difference between Mega Man 2 and Mega Man 2 difficult, obviously, is the difficulty. Rockman 2 only has the difficult mode, whereas Mega Man 2 has the normal mode, which is easier. All the bosses take double damage, and so it makes a lot of the gameplay easier. However, you're about to see the first one here, but these weapon get screens that Hypa, you're basically see him go through right now, are quite a bit longer in the North American version, just because English text, again, being longer, and so the sort of ease of gameplay, they have to take a time hit on these weapon get screens. A little over 40 seconds lost just to text, actually. So it's a pretty substantial time loss if the runners can't execute the Rockman 2 strats. So both runners looks like are on normal, so we won't see any time gain on this race based on weapon get screens. Other than that, there's movement-wise, there's not a whole lot that you can really do to go faster while walking, since there's no slide in this game. But it is sort of interesting to note that you actually do move slightly faster while walking on the ground as opposed to jumping. So ideally, in most cases, runners don't actually want to jump if they don't have to. They'd rather walk on the ground as long as possible. It's a very, very small time difference, but it is something to note. Sometimes if you see a guy looking like he's jumping down a hallway, ooh, Hype is not going to make it back to the ceiling. It's probably because he's trying to save time there if he's not jumping. Zips are going to be the big thing, though, for most of the movement in this game. Hypa was trying to just set up one there, using the item 3 to sort of push his head into the ceiling. This game doesn't really have collision checks for ceilings in Mega Man's hitbox, so you can use the items to sort of push yourself into the ceilings and zip. And that's what we saw Hypa trying to do, but unfortunately he fell off the item 3 and then ran out, so he's going to have to walk that section. When we see Primal get there, we'll probably see him go and get that zip and probably pick up some time on Hypa, so kind of an unfortunate mistake there. Meanwhile, we actually see Primal going air second, which means these Yoku blocks that Hypa is jumping across right now, Primal will actually have item 2 and he'll be able to fly across that pit. The downside is Primal's going to have to ride these cloud platforms, which is pretty slow. I'd say roughly executing fast air with item 1s, which is what Hypo will probably be doing, versus riding these platforms is around 10 seconds slower. It's not exactly, but it's around that. It kind of depends on your execution and like what strats you go for in this cloud platform of how much faster or slower it is. But I would say to the average person, it's probably about 10 seconds. So Hypa gets through heat. So he's going to have his item 1 for Airman stage. And Primal's coming into this last room of air. Some of these platforms can be kind of scary, but you see Primal just taking sort of the easier approach to it and purposely taking damage so that he can use his invincibility frames to just sort of walk through the spikes without any danger of getting knocked down into the pit. One of the sort of biggest forms of RNG or randomness in Mega Man 2, outside of boss fights, is actually weapon drops, especially because these guys are running on normal. For whatever reason, normal has a very high drop rate on things like large health and large ammo refills, so it's actually almost part of the strats to have to try to watch out and avoid those drops so that they can not pick them up, because getting a large refill in this game is actually pretty costly. I think it's a little over 80 frames to pick up a large refill and watch it fill completely, and that's over a full second, so pretty slow. Hypa unfortunately taking a death there right at the right before going for fast air, so it looks like he's going to just take a game over so he can get his flashback. Unfortunate there, but as long as he can get through it on this next time, it shouldn't be too big of a loss. But it definitely makes doing these platforms a lot easier with the flash. So he's just gonna quickly game over, get his weapon energy back, and continue. But these runners should be pretty close now, with those deaths in that game over, that we might see. Oh no! With that death, actually, Primal might be back in the lead. Seeing Hypa now just taking the damage boost instead of the extra game over. Oof, very nice ledge jump there. I'm gonna try this again. Ooh, you got a nice little despawn there. That was kind of nice. I actually think the despawns in 2 are, I think they're pixel perfect, so getting one is actually pretty impressive. I don't know if that's something he goes for, if it was just a kind of a fluke, but it's kind of cool to see. But he is through, and he is going to hit the checkpoint here, so hopefully he won't have to do this fast air screen again. His health is a little low, but he should still have 1 life left too if he does take a death. And there's Primal flying over that long pit section with item 2, so he's definitely got the lead back again after kind of a rough Mega Man 1 for him, but should be okay. Ooh. So Hypa, again on his last life, he's gonna have to be careful here. Make sure that he doesn't fall into this pit. Yeah, okay, there he goes. Taking those sort of unoptimized jumps on purpose to make sure that he gets hit and not knocked back into the pit is pretty important there. Heat is down for Primal, so he's got sort of that... Ooh, no! I was going to say half-screen lead, but now it's going to be more than that as Hypa takes another game over. So now it becomes critical just to get through this stage more than anything else, I think, because you don't want to get stuck in air. You know, doing these harder strats, obviously they are faster, but taking the deaths in the game overs, sometimes you're better off just doing it the slow way. And unfortunately, it's costing Hypa a little bit here. But this is not an easy strat to pull off either. Like, so in his defense, this is pretty challenging. Some of these jumps are pretty precise, and if you're off just a little bit with your movement, it can be kind of awkward getting through. Knockback in Mega Man 2 is just not like a lot of the other games, so with Hypa being more used to 4 and 5, it can be kind of scary. He's gonna have to menu here, otherwise he's gonna take a death, and make sure he has to kill these eggs so that he doesn't get hit before this checkpoint. Meanwhile, Primal going through the first sort of death warp of the game here in Crash. He zipped through some of the screens further into the stage, and then has to kill himself so that you can respawn at the checkpoint after sort of crossing it. So that's sort of what you saw him doing that. You'll see the runners also do that again in Woodman stage. So again, Hypa going through this last screen. Hopefully you can get through it this time. Primal into his climb. Oof. Hopefully Hypa's home free here. Again, sort of a really long couple screens with a lot of ladders, similar to the Elect climb. But in this version, in this game, we have item 3, which is what we use to get through it pretty quickly. So Primal now looks like he's got about a full stage advantage. Again, this is a really long category, so this can change at any point. But definitely got some breathing room at the moment, so Hypa's got a little bit of work cut out for him now to try to catch up here a little bit. But still a good 4.5 games to go, so definitely plenty of time to do that. And with his 2 best games sort of still to come, I think there's definitely room to catch up. So both runners now have all their items, so you're going to see probably those get used quite a bit now to try to zip through the stages. Primal coming into Quickman. Probably we're going to see him do the dark zip, I think. Seems like a pretty oh no, he's just gonna walk it. So it looks like we're gonna see some zipless Quickman. It's actually like I said, it's faster to zip usually in these games, but if he doesn't feel that he's comfortable doing them, especially like this screen with all the quick beams, you can do it with the lights on, but you usually do it in the dark, and sometimes it's kind of scary because you can't see the floor, so you don't actually know where the pits are unless you sort of have it memorized. So Primal just deciding, nope, I'm just going to do it zipless. Makes it easy. And he doesn't have to worry about over-zipping or soft-locking either on the second zip. Hypa going through that crash zip. You notice the runner's changing to heat. That's actually because there's a weird sort of, I guess you could call it a glitch, where when you charge heat and die, when you release the charge after you die, it just instantly respawns you. So it's actually faster for the runners to switch to heat and then just hold B to start charging. And then the moment the death sound goes off, to just let go of B, and it will respawn them instantly instead of having to wait for that sort of delay. You can do it with the lights on. If you're halfway through your zip, you can turn back to the left, and it will actually respawn sort of one of the little like fire guys. It's sort of like I think it's like one of the triggers to basically turn the lights on, and then you have the lights come back on. Otherwise, if you don't turn back, which is the faster way to do it, the lights stay off. So that's sort of the 2 different ways you can do it. It costs you about a half a second to turn back and turn the lights back on. It might not actually be the fire guys. It might just be a trigger somewhere in the screen that turns the lights back on, but that's basically what's happening. So here's Primal setting up probably the easiest zip in the game, the metal zip. And Hypa is through crash. Metal has pretty much just a ton of item usage. You use the item 1 to zip, and then you use the item 2 to sort of fly over all these enemies here. Since these guys are playing on normal, the Metal fight actually becomes fairly straightforward. Metal Man typically only picks an action to jump and throw Metal Blaze at you when you press the B button, or after a certain set amount of time. If you don't do anything, he'll eventually jump as well, but if you just go into the fight holding the B button, because Quick Weapon will just continually shoot if you hold B, the game never registers that you press B, therefore Metal Man doesn't do anything. And in normal, you only have to hit him a few times, so you can just basically win the fight by holding B and jumping in the middle of the room like you saw Primal do just there. In Rockman 2, he's got more health, and he actually will trigger before he dies, so you will have to sort of dodge at least one volley. So there, Hypa's doing what I was talking about here. Here's the zip where the lights turn off, and now he's got to go through those screens like Primal did, but with the lights off, and he has to remember where all those holes are so he can get through the screens very quickly. Oof, that beam was very, very close. Kind of scary. Oh no! That was the very last screen too. So unfortunately, Hype is going to have to go through that again. Looks like he's just going to walk it as well this time. So that's kind of unfortunate. He was right at the end. He had the time save there. Just couldn't get past that very last beam. Primal doesn't quite get past the third dog, unfortunately, so he's going to have to kill him. See if he sets up here for the Woodman zip. Looks like he is. So this is a pretty involved zip. There's a lot going on. It's kind of hard to explain, but essentially the runners are doing what they did in Crash. They're getting onto a different screen. So like where you see him right now on this screen with that ladder, he's not on that screen at all. He's on a completely different screen of Woodman's stage. So he's got to watch out for pits that he can't see and jump over them. And essentially he's just zipping through the stage, and the goal here is he's going to get to the checkpoint room of Woodman, and then he's going to kill himself so that he respawns in the boss corridor, is what sort of the strat involved is here. Again, switching to heat so that the respawn is faster. And he got it, so good wood. So Hypa does get through quick as well, through that second walkthrough. Again, kind of an unfortunate death there. It was literally right at the very last beam, so. Primal's got one stage to go, just Bubble Man left. So Mega Man 2 a little bit more friendly to Primal right now. We'll see how it goes in the next game. Mega Man 3 is coming up. It's the first game with the slide and a lot of mashing, so movement starts to become very key as you don't just hold right anymore. You actually have to start timing your slides and chaining them together here coming up in the next 4 games, so. Hypa getting under that little clown guy there. It's actually kind of tight to do, and so pretty nice little hop there to get through him. Probably the last zip you'll see Primal do there. That one there in Bubble. It's another one of the easier ones. You can do another zip here with the item 2, but it's actually kind of tight timing. I think it's like a 2-frame window, so most people don't go for it. But he also used his item 2, I believe, at the beginning of the stage, so he doesn't have any left. So it's not really an option for Primal. So I think Hypa grabbed the 1-up at the beginning of Quick, so I think he's got an extra life here to do the Woodman zip. But I didn't actually look, so I'm going to have to try to pay attention. Meanwhile, Primal finishes 2. He's off to Mega Man 3. Try to see when he menus here if he's got any lives. He does, okay, so he's fine. He'll be able to do the Woodman zip, since that's, again, the 2 zips that require the Death Warp. Wood is the second one. So Mega Man 3 is really where runners have to be very careful throughout their run. You notice just even miss-shooting in that first room of top, Primal got a lot of lag or slowdown from putting that bullet on screen. Mega Man 3 is sort of a challenge in a way, just to keep lag down and trying to keep the game from basically keep the game running at normal speed is sort of almost a challenge in itself. They have to be very careful to not overshoot, kill certain enemies and get them off screen before other enemies appear, so that they're not having too many sprites on screen, having the game just sort of really move at a sluggish rate. So you'll see a lot of that, them jumping maybe to kill an enemy, even though it might not necessarily be in their path. It's done on purpose to get it off screen, so that it's not slowing them down as they go through the rest of the screen. Primal is starting with top first. I guess that's something that he's always done, but it is actually probably one of the harder routes to do. Top first, sort of, the routes in Mega Man 3 sort of bounced around quite a bit. Oh, he took a death though, right at the very end, going for that top jump. It looked like it's about a 35 to 40 second death there, so giving Hypa some of his time back. But top first, again, is one of the more difficult routes because you go through Shadow Man stage typically without Magnet, and Magnet makes that stage very, very trivial, so we'll see how Primal handles that Paracube screen at the end of Shadow. Ooh, having some issues with this Met here, getting sniped and hit around, but he doesn't get the death on the spikes, so that's good. Single block slides in this game are actually pretty scary as well, because in Mega Man 3 you're not allowed to jump out of your slide for 8 frames, and so it can actually be kind of scary for the runners if they decide to go for them, because you can't just hit A anytime you want. You actually have to wait those 8 frames, or you'll just basically get your input eaten and you'll fall into the pit, likely. So you got to be kind of careful to avoid that as well. Primal is at the boss fight now. He should be fine. He is going to get a 4 cycle, unfortunately, but... Ooh, and also not near the middle of the room, so he's going to have to watch Mega Man walk to the center of the room. You really want to be sort of planning your boss fights accordingly so that Mega Man is dying in the center of the room, and ideally that your boss dies in the center of the room as well, but unfortunately that's not an option with Top, because the only time he's in the middle of the room, he's actually invincible, so... Hypa having some issues trying to set up this bubble zip. Looks like he's finally got it now. But one of the nice things about the top route is you do get the 3 hardest stages, or 2 of the hardest stages, I guess, out of the way in your first 3 stages, out of the way really fast. So Shadow and Gemini being early, it's kind of nice to get them out of the way and done, so you can focus on the rest of the game after that. Here's our first Proto fight. Proto Man has 28 health, so the runners have to fire 28 shots into him to make him run away, basically. So having good jump mashing is pretty key in these Proto Man fights. And Hypa has finished Mega Man 2, so off to his first sliding Mega Man game. And definitely with that death that Primal took in Top, he's actually gotten quite a bit of time back. So we'll see. They're going to take different routes, which means we probably won't see how far ahead these guys are from each other, or what the distance is between them, until they hit Mega Man 4. The Gemini route and the Top First route never really overlap, like Magnet First and Top First. But again, yeah, this game has a lot of routes, mostly because the menu loads very fast. The menu in this game is probably one of the most awkward menus to learn, but once you know it, it's very fast, and it's one of the best menus in the Mega Man franchise. And so there's actually quite a few routes that have come sort of over the years. It started with sort of Top First, and then it dragged over into like the Gemini First, was sort of like the king for a while. And then Fasta sort of came out and pioneered the Magnet First strats that you usually see people do now. And again, now Top First is sort of top dog again. So it's sort of the fastest route has sort of bounced around. People are not really sure what route they really want to play in this game, but they're all pretty comparable. Top First is maybe a few seconds faster than Magnet First, and Magnet First maybe a couple seconds faster than Gemini First. So realistically, the time difference isn't huge, but it is a difference. So technically, Primal is doing the faster route here, but we may not really see that time save here, just because the strats you have to do to actually get that time save over the other routes they're pretty tough. So Hypa gets through that long single block room. That's the scariest room of this stage, so very good execution to get through that. You notice them, both Hypa and Primal also did it here, where he slid into the room where you're supposed to get a cutscene with Proto Man, and because of that, you actually can slide through and jump through the transition and skip the cutscene with Proto Man, which does waste about 10 seconds, but it also means that the music doesn't respawn. So you probably heard on Hypa's screen there when he was doing it that he was going through the stage with no music, and that's why the music didn't come back. Oh, Gemini. Giving him that death there. This stage actually is faster if you don't have music playing. Music actually slows the console down a little bit. And so killing the music, so to speak, is actually an advantage. Hypa gets through it on his second try. So that could be that time that Primal lost. He could have that back here. We'll see, though. Primal does have to get through this room without dying. This is still a scary room, even if you aren't doing these single block slides. And right there, like I said, this room is, for whatever reason, just the lag in this room is really weird. It's just randomly you'll get like a few lag frames, and it's enough that sometimes it can throw off your inputs, and you can just fall to your death. So there you see Primal taking a death there. He is electing to do the top route again. Now he's got the music playing, so you can actually see that his movement through the screen is actually quite a bit slower now that he's got music playing in the stage. Just showing you how much slower it is when you have music playing. It's actually pretty frustrating. So he has to make sure that he holds A long enough to make these jumps, and he is through the second time. Meanwhile, Hypa's into Needle. One of the big benefits of doing Gemini first is you get to go to Needle fairly early on and get Rush Jet, and that'll make stages like Magnet a lot faster because you don't have to do the Yoku blocks. Primal having some issues hitting Gemini Man here with Shadow Blade. He's probably gonna, yep, there, I was gonna say he's probably gonna get a Gemini laser, and there it is. Struggling to get this last hit. He should be fine though. Actually kills Gemini near the center, which is kind of nice, but he's a little off center, but that's all right. It's not too terrible. One of the sort of unfortunate things with doing Gemini first with Needle stage is you only have Gemini's weapon and Buster. So there's a lot of times where you want to use Gemini's weapon because it kills things faster, but on the other hand, you also need the weapon for the boss fights. So, ooh, and right off the bat, Hypa missing a laser here, unfortunately, so costing him a little bit of time. Oh, missing a second laser. Hopefully that can bounce around. Okay, he does get a lucky bounce off the wall and have it hit Needle for the kill. Needle stage is kind of interesting because it is one of the, well, it is the shortest stage of the 8 robots, but it's actually probably got the most like high damaging enemies. Like these needle presses you see Primal going through actually hit you pretty hard. There's the porcupines, if they body you, like roll into you, they do a lot of damage. Like this stage is basically designed in a way like they've got lots of HP, lots of enemies that, you know, take time to kill. So even though the stage itself is kind of short, it's almost designed in a way to try to slow you down. Like even these Sniper Joes have quite a lot of HP. It's like it's designed to sort of hold you in that screen for a long time. But we just either quickly damage through them with Gemini Laser or magnets, or we just slide through them because it's just not worth the time trying to buster them. Primal does not miss any shots and gets a very quick kill. One of the biggest time losses for the Gemini first route is the fact that you do Sparkman third. Since you don't actually have Sparkman's true weakness, which is Shadow Blade, you only have one of his soft weaknesses. Spark takes 2 damage from Needle as opposed to just 1 damage from Buster, so you're going to see Hypa killing him with the Needle. Just making this fight last a little longer. Oh, again, sort of another death there. It looked like he was sort of scared he was going to get hit by the screw enemy, but it's a weird thing about that last room is if you just hold right and go, you're pretty much safe. It's pretty hard to screw that room up without stopping, basically. So it's important to just keep going. As you see there, now he's holding right. Just keep going, just keep going. The left side of the screws actually don't have a hitbox, so they don't hit you, so you can just jump right through those. It's actually sort of one of those screens where knowing the speed strat makes the room a lot easier. So obviously Needle here taking quite a bit longer to kill Sparkman just because you have to hit him quite a bit more times, but Hypa is through his third robot. Now, Primal's going to Snake a little bit earlier here. It doesn't really matter when you go to Snake after you fight Needle. But the downside of going to Snake early is now Snake is actually going to be in Primal's menu. And so some of Primal's menus are going to be a little more awkward and slower because he's going to have to do some extra inputs to go past Snake. Anytime that he goes to the second half of the menu that has like Snake Spark and Shadow Man's weapon or the Rush adapters, he's going to lose time basically. So it's not a big deal, but it's a little bit of time loss, you know. And so he just sort of has to be careful. I mean, I'm assuming he knows his menus, but you just have to be a little bit careful you don't miss menu here. So Hypa now going off to get Magnet's weapon. He has his weakness, or one of his weaknesses, which is Spark. Magnet's actually weak to two weapons, both Spark and Shadow. So just getting one of them is usually good enough, and he's got Spark, so it should make that fight pretty fast. And he's also got Rush Jet, which means he can skip, like I said, these Yoku blocks. Saves about, I think, 11 seconds to not have to do these blocks, so it's a pretty big advantage. Primal will also have Jet, though, so that time save really only comes if you're running against somebody who does Magnet Man first. Since neither of these guys actually has to do the blocks, we won't see any actual time gain for Hypa on Primal, but it's definitely a much faster way to do those rooms, though. He did Snake right before Spark. So he should have only 3 robots left counting this one. And Hypa gets through Magnet, so he's got about 4 to go. One of the downsides, like, even though it looks like right now Hypa's maybe only about a stage behind now, his one of those stages is Snake, and Snake is the longest stage of the 8 robots, so sometimes it can look better when you're trying to compare 2 different routes in Mega Man 3. Sometimes it can look better for somebody, but that's just because they might still have Snake Man to do. So Hypa's off to Hardman stage, seeing Magnet Missile finally getting some good use now that we have one of the runners that actually has it. And you can see how it sort of tracks those bees as he fires them, so he doesn't have to... You still have to kind of aim them a little bit and shoot in the right spots, but for the most part, Magnet will track the enemies for you, and you won't have to do a whole lot of aiming. And Primal does get his kill, but he's not really anywhere near the middle of the room, so again, he's going to have to lose a few seconds watching Mega Man walk to the center of the screen. He only has 2 robots left to do. Hypa's about halfway through his 5th stage. Mega Man 3, though, is a pretty forgiving game when it comes to deaths. Like, unless you die in a pit somewhere, you don't typically die to damage. It's rare to run out of health, I guess. So like there's plenty of like refills like that. You get an E-tank in Hardman stage. Most of the bosses don't deal a ton of damage with their with their bodies, except for like Hardman here. You're just gonna see Hype is gonna get hit twice and take quite a bit of damage here, but most of the bosses don't deal a whole bunch. So this game I think is quite a bit safer when it comes to races and that kind of stuff. But in the next game, in Mega Man 4, most of the bosses actually deal a lot of damage with their bodies, and so executing boss fights correctly becomes very critical. A death on a boss fight in 4 can cost you close to like 35 seconds every time, so it's really important to do the boss fights correctly. Again, Primal with Rush Jet, just flying over those Yokus, so you don't have to wait and do the puzzle. Oh, tried to do a little jump off rush, but accidentally hit up a little too early and just re-grabbed the ladder, but not a big time loss there. It's pretty minor. Primal going with Shadow Blade. It's a better choice here actually to fight Magnet with Shadow than Spark, because like I said, they deal the same amount of damage, and the bonus with Shadow obviously is you can throw it sort of upward and diagonally upward. So if Magnet gives you a bad pattern, he got a good pattern and he gave him a shield, but if Magnet gives you a bad pattern and jumps, it allows you to be able to throw your Shadow Blade in a way that you can kill Magnet faster by throwing your blade upward. Whereas Spark, you only shoot it straight across, so you sort of lose out on that a little bit. Hypa having some issues trying to figure out his menu. Oh, a lot of those magnets tracking the yarn ball, unfortunately. So that's one of the issues with Magnet. You still kind of have to aim it in a way that your shots actually hit what you're aiming for. If another target comes into the way like there, you see the magnets are tracking the tops and not the top enemy, just sort of the way they are programmed. So you have to be kind of careful that you're actually shooting in a way that you know your magnet will hit. Oh, Hypa sort of looked like he might have got pulled off the edge there. Those tops can actually sort of do that. They can sort of like pull you off as you come across. Primal getting some lag there by not killing those monkeys. Again, that's sort of what this game is sort of about when you want to go fast. You need to reduce the number of sprites on the screen as best as you can. So, and I like the little coil over the Met Dozer. Dozers can be a pain to deal with sometimes. They've got some awkward hitboxes. So here we go, Hypa. Just gonna wait out that top. Ooh, Primal getting clipped by that beehive. Getting hit a couple times there. Hypa gets his top kill. Primal should be fine HP-wise. He's got plenty of health for the deboost, but he's still gonna grab the refill anyway. You want to take the deboost on this Hardman fight, like you see Primal go for here. You want to get hit by the bottom of Hardman's hitbox, because if you don't, when he hits the ground, he'll freeze you. So to be able to get your last couple hits in, typically you want to hit the bottom of his hitbox, and for whatever reason, by hitting the bottom of Hardman's hitbox, it will actually unfreeze you, and you'll be able to do an action immediately, whereas if you get frozen, you have to wait for that to wear off before you can actually do something. So that's why you see the runners taking the damage boost there. So Primal is off to Mega Man 4. Looks like he's going to go with Pharaoh first. The only risk for that is if he wants the balloon, he's going to either have to slow down to grab it or just go all in and hope that the fly doesn't snipe him here. So we'll see what happens here on this jump. He's going for it, and he gets good luck from the fly, so he's over the pit, and he should get his balloon. The balloon isn't overly critical in 8 Robots. You only really use balloon in 2 stages, in Ringman and Skullman, and combined, it only really saves you about maybe 10 seconds. So if the runners don't get that jump and they miss balloon, it's not too critical. Pretty much if you don't have balloon, you'd basically just replace that and use flash stopper instead in the rooms where you would normally use balloons. But he's got them, so hopefully when Hypa goes, he'll be also able to get his balloon as well. The advantage of going Pharaoh first, obviously, is you'll have Pharaoh shot for Brightman. And Pharaoh has an interesting glitch where if you hit a target with the charge above your head and don't release the B button, you still are technically holding a charge, and you can then release B and still get a full charge with it. So you're essentially getting two charge shots for only charging at one time. So it makes getting a lot of your hits in a lot faster, because the charge Pharaoh shot still does 3 damage just like the Buster. So I think the only boss that Pharaoh doesn't hit is Skull Man. Skull is actually immune to it, but you could actually do that on every single boss if you really wanted to, pretty much. So Primal fighting Pharaoh here, kind of hanging a little far away from him. Now he's getting close, which is good. You want to actually stand close to Pharaoh, because Pharaoh sort of gets a little derpy when you stand closer to him. He just decides he's going to shoot at you forever, and it makes him very, very easy to manage. If you try to get further away from him, he'll start jumping around like a madman and throwing Pharaoh shots at you, and it starts to actually become pretty difficult to dodge. But thankfully, Pharaoh is the only Robot Master that doesn't deal 8 damage with his body. He only deals 4. So even if he starts to jump around like a madman, if you do start taking some hits, as long as you've managed your health well through the stage, you should be fine health-wise. This next stage, though, you see him going to his ring, and this stage has a lot of mini-boss skips that require you to damage boost through, and so it can be a pretty scary boss fight, because by the time you get to ring, you're typically very, very close to dead. Most of the time you're one hit, no matter what you get hit by, so we'll see what kind of strats Primal decides to go for, if he decides to try to maintain more HP, or if he just goes all in and takes all the D-boosts. But like these hippos that you're seeing him fight one of them now, they actually don't have a wall that blocks you from progressing. So if you just jump over them and into the screen transition, you can skip them completely, as you saw him do there. There's another ring mini-boss later in the stage that you can do a similar thing, where you just D-boost and go through them. The only actual mini-boss you have to fight is this one that he's about to come into to the room here. He's doing some extra menus, which might be good to save ammo. Menus, unfortunately, in 4, though, are pretty slow, so extra menus sometimes can cost you quite a bit of time. So that one mini-boss there prior, he had to kill that one to progress, because you have to fall through the floor, but all these other ones we're just going to take the hit and progress through. He's got plenty of HP as well, which means his ringman fight should be a little bit less stress. A little bit more stress-free is what I mean here, and hopefully he won't have any issues with it. Hypa is also going Pharaoh first, so it looks like these guys are going to follow roughly the same route. Hypa might do Bright second, but we'll see. He had to wait there a little bit on the fly, so he didn't get sniped. But it looks like both these guys are going to have their balloons, so we won't see any time loss to strats unless they don't execute them correctly, I guess. So yeah, actually, Primal's going with a slightly slower fight here. Probably just something he's more comfortable with. So he only actually got 1 double hit. But the fight is still pretty fast with Pharaoh Shot. Ring takes 6 damage from a fully charged Pharaoh Shot, so he only needs to get 5 hits in to actually kill him. So with the double hits, if done correctly, that fight can be very quick, and we'll probably see that done when Hypa gets there. Again, this is Hypa's main game as well for these 6 games in this category, so there's a very, very strong chance, hopefully, that we'll see him catch up, make up some time on Primal here. Hypa has a very, very good time in this game, so... Primal actually going for the slightly harder strats here. He's using Pharaoh Shot here. Pharaoh So there's two different ways you can do Dust. You can do it here like this with Pharaoh, or you can use Flash Stopper. Primal doesn't actually have Flash Stopper, which is why he's doing the Pharaoh strats, but arguably for a race, I would say Flash is the much better approach to these screens. A perfectly executed Pharaoh room 1 and 2, like this room, including this room he's doing now, is only about a half second faster than a perfectly executed Flash Stopper. And the Flash Stopper strats are much easier. So I usually always recommend that people do the bright strats in those screens, just because unless you're really just trying to shave as much time as possible, it's not worth it to do the Pharaoh strats. And the other thing too is it's also reliant on RNG, because there's that one Stomper, and if he hits you, you're already slower than the Flash strats. So it's sort of like just luck based if you get the the good RNG and the good execution and no drops. There's a lot of stuff that has to go right to make Pharaoh actually faster in those rooms. So yeah, we see Hypa going to Bright second, so he'll be probably using Flash in Dust when we get to that section. And meanwhile, Primal into his Dustman fight. We'll see what kind of RNG he gets. This is sort of the first RNG boss of Mega Man 4. Looks like he's getting pretty good luck. That's a good pattern in the sense that Dust didn't go invincible, but it's a pretty bad kill location. That actually loses over a full second killing Dust in the corner like that, but not a whole lot you can do about it because Dust will just sort of act on his own, so you're just going to have to hope that Dust moves to the middle, but no such luck, unfortunately, this time. So Primal's actually going to Skull now. I never did see him do Bright, though. Did he do Bright? He's not doing the Zip. I gotta check his menu now and pay attention, because I didn't see him do that stage. And if that's the case, it means he doesn't have Flash Stopper for the second half. Yeah, he doesn't have it. So Primal's going to be doing a bunch of balloon jumps here, but he does not have Flash Stopper, which means his other option here is to do some of the slower strats here. There's some slower strats in the second half of the stage that use Dust, where you basically skip out a menu, but you get a lot of extra lag for using it, and unfortunately it's a few seconds slower to do this, but it's kind of cool to see some different strats, though. Trying to go for some fancy wall jump balloons here. He's actually costing himself a lot of time, so that's kind of unfortunate. But here he'll hopefully just change to Dust here. Oh, he's going back to Buster. Okay, so Primal's actually going to lose quite a bit of time here for this strat. You'll see Hypa's actually going to have some much faster strats for these rooms. And Primal not doing the Dust menu there is actually, again, like even just that menu, that extra menu, it's going to cost him an extra like couple seconds just having to redo another menu later as well. So kind of, I don't know if that was part of his plan due to his older strats, because Primal does have some older sort of pre-2013 strats. He hasn't really updated a lot of his games recently, so that alone is going to cost him quite a bit. He's also doing this fight a little bit slower as well, so he does get a good shield pattern, though, from Skull, which is good. But again, another corner kill, which is not good in Mega Man 4. So that's going to cost him another second and a half or so there. So again, if Hypa executes these fights correctly and gets through these stages the way that they're intended, he could be making up quite a bit of time. Like, it may not be a huge, 35-second gain in one spot, but, he's making up 4 seconds here and 2 seconds there, and you may see a much closer race here after 4. And he's off to Dive, so again, Primal is not going to have Bright for the entirety of Dive stage, which again is another big time loss. Not being able to freeze these enemies in place is 2 problems. One, he has to take a lot of hits like he did there, which is slower, and it also means he opens himself up to drops, and the enemies are moving, therefore he's getting more lag. So it's It's really, there's 3 things going wrong when you don't have Flash Stopper here. A lot slower whale kills as well. Okay, so Hype is coming into his Ringman fight. This is, hopefully we'll see that fight I was talking about, this very fast double hit fight. Hype has got HP too, so he can do a damage boost, which is also helpful, makes the fight a little bit faster. He's got underneath him, looking good. Very nice. So there you go, showing how much faster that fight is when executed very, very well with the 2 double hits. So again, Hypa gaining ground pretty much everywhere so far in this game. So Primal's trying to show off an older strat. It's a little slower than using Bright and killing the whale, but you can actually jump over these whales if you jump high enough off screen, and that's what he's showing there. The reason it's actually slower is because you have to menu to balloon to do it. And like I said, menus in this game are pretty slow, so any extra menus that you can cut out typically is a good thing. So sort of another reason why that strat's not used anymore. Again, Hypa has Flash now for Dust, so you're seeing a lot less risk now compared to what Primal had with Pharaoh Shot, because he doesn't have to kill those pit enemies in the first room. And again, all of these little copter head guys are going to be frozen in place, so hopefully it won't be too much trouble for Hypa to deal with. And again, another corner kill. I'm kind of worried for Primal here. A lot of these slower boss kills and slower stage strats are giving Hypa quite a bit of opportunity here to get back into this race. I think it was about a 4-minute lead that Primal had coming into this game. So I'd say that's probably getting close to have been maybe already cut in half just by the execution. Again, Primal going to drill another stage that not having Flash Stopper in is really, really slow. Basically, the Mega Man 4 speedrun is really routed in a way that you want to get Flash Stopper and Pharaoh Shot early, because those are the 2 best weapons of the game for the speedrun. And so not having one of them is a pretty crucial, or pretty critical time loss. Hype is getting a jump, that's good. We want to see Dustman stay in the middle if possible. And kills him right in the middle too, so that's a really good kill location. Hypa getting pretty good luck here from Dustman. Some other strats you might see Primal. I'm not sure if Primal's going to do it or not, but some other backup strats you can do here, since he doesn't have Flash Stopper, is for the last room with the dropping rocks, you can actually use Skull's weapon. It's a pretty decent backup. You get more lag for it though, because the sprite is it's a pretty laggy sprite, unfortunately. But and you can also use Dive Missile here, but it looks like he's going with Skull strats, so you'll see if he fires it there like he did there, where he fired it a little too early. He gets quite a bit of lag for using it here, so the ideal scenario if you're going to use Skull is to try to not fire it until the last second. Getting a lot of drops too there, which is kind of unfortunate. So again, if Hypa can get through that stage with the Flash Stopper, he'll be able to save himself quite a bit of time. The only real reason I think that Primal's doing this route is he's going to now have Rush Jet for Brightman stage. And as good as that sounds, being able to fly over the spikes and not having to ride the grasshoppers, again, that's actually not a good strat, because having Rush Jet on screen with all those other sprites is very laggy. So you'll see it if he uses Jet in Bright stage here coming up. You're actually going to see how slow he moves through some of those rooms, especially once the totems and the grasshoppers are on screen at the same time. Meanwhile, Hypa going through this skull stage, showing again why Flash Stopper is the intended way right now. Just very quick. And hopefully he'll get a slightly more optimized kill than the Primal did. We'll see what kind of pattern he gets from the shield. Manipulating him to the middle of the room, that's good. Not a bad shield, about a 1 second shield. It's a little. I think it was a little bit slower than Primal's, but I mean, it's just RNG. There's nothing you can really do to control that. So, better, much better kill location. So he actually was faster than Primal. So here we see Primal is now in Bright Stage. We'll see if he menus. He is going to menu. He's going to Jet. So you're going to see why this isn't used, unfortunately, is you can just see how much extra leg he's going to pull. This one's not too bad because there's only one Grasshopper and one Totem on the screen. But when he gets into the checkpoint room coming up after this top room here, you'll see why this strat isn't used, because it's very, very laggy room. Ooh, activating the Grasshopper is even worse because it actually generates even more lag. So hopefully... Oh, it's so slow. So, yeah, it's not ideal, but it does guarantee that you get through the room without dying, which I guess is good. And again, he has Pharaoh Shot just like Hypa did, so he'll be using that for the Brightman fight. Hopefully, ideally getting the 2 charge shots for the price of 1. Meanwhile, Hypa going through Dive Man stage again with Flash Stopper, so again, a lot of these strats for him are going to be a lot faster than what Primal was able to execute. I'm going to be careful here to not fall into the pit where the wire is, because we don't need that. Gets a nice little skull refill, which is kind of nice, means the fight will be a little bit safer. Now, Primal's sort of got off kilter here with the HP values for Brightman. Brightman does have the ability to freeze you in place, and it's based off of how much HP he has, so he has to make sure that he's aware of how much HP he's got. It looks like he sort of fixed it there and should be fine. But you don't want Brightman to end up with 16, 8, or 4 health, because those are the triggers that he uses to flash you. It's actually not random, so the runners just have to be kind of careful that that doesn't happen. So Primal's got 1 stage to go, and Hypa's got 2 stages to go here. So it looks like he's caught, like I said, 1 entire stage up, because he was a good 2 stages behind in after Mega Man 3, so Hypa's definitely made up a good probably 2 minutes here on Primal so far. And we're still not out, which is something important to note. Toad's stage, despite the fact that everybody knows that Toad is the easiest Robot Master in Mega Man 4, Toad's stage is actually surprisingly difficult. And so you have to actually be very careful. There's a lot of things working against you that aren't normal, like the rain in the first screen. You have to sort of adjust to make sure your jumps are a little bit bigger so that you're going to make your jumps, because it does push you back. These waterfalls, they do sort of pull you left and right, and if you jump underneath one, it will push you down. So you have to be very careful of your positioning in a lot of different spots in this stage to make sure you're not going to fall to your death or miss a jump or whatever. These snail mini-bosses, if you freeze them early enough before they actually activate, you can just skip them completely there. So that's what you see Primal doing. It's why he had to get Flash before doing this stage. That's the scarier one, but he does get through it with the D-boost. So into his final screen here, and then off the Toadman. But yeah, like, the execution in this stage, sometimes people just forget. They're like, oh yeah, it's just Toadman left, no big deal. But the stage itself, like I said, it's a little tricky, so runners have to make sure that they don't sort of grow complacent and forget what they need to do in that stage. But Primal gets through it very nicely. And he gets his final shot. So Primal is off to Mega Man 5, which is his sort of main game. We'll see probably some better play, hopefully, from him compared to some of these other games where he hasn't played them probably in a long time. Whereas 5, he's played a little bit more recently, so probably see some more up-to-date strats and better execution here, I'm guessing. Hypa having to be a little bit careful here that he doesn't take a body hit. His health is a little low. Getting some bad luck here from Drill, unfortunately, but he gets his kill. So just Toadman stage left for him. and then he'll be off to 5 as well. So anything can still happen yet. Hypa, like I said, he's made up a good probably full 2 minutes on Primal so far in 4. If he can maintain and get through Toadman stage, it was a pretty good game for him. So. Just that sort of unfortunate luck in Airman stage is still really the big cause of this lead gap, or this gap between the two runners. There's not a whole lot to say really yet for Starman stage. Mega Man 5 though there's quite a few differences just in regards to some of the mechanics with the Charge Buster. The Charge Buster is a lot larger and a lot stronger in Mega Man 5 than it is in 4, so it's actually easier to kill things with it. But the trade-off is, for a few things, is you can't charge while you're sliding, and if you get hit while you're charging, you lose your charge, whereas in 4 you don't. So sort of a little more, it's a little more important to be dodging while you're trying to charge if you need your charge, and sometimes you have to kind of like slow your movement down to make sure your charge finishes, because there are cases in 5 where it's better to have a charge shot than it is to mash, because unfortunately in Mega Man 5 enemies actually have invincibility frames, so you actually can't mash enemies down like you can in every other Mega Man game basically. You have to time your shots. There's 8 frames of invincibility frames every time you hit an enemy, so if there's an enemy that has 3 health, typically, if you can, it's faster to try to hit it once with a charge shot as opposed to shooting it 3 times with lemons. So you may see sometimes the runners slightly slow down just to make sure they have that charge shot. You'll actually see that coming up here in Gravity as well. So Hypa's done with 4, and less than that 2 stages behind here, so he definitely made up some time in 4 for sure. But this game is pretty much, there's only really one route here, and that's because the super arrow is so useful in this game. As you see, Primal starting to use it here now. It's useful similar to the balloon in 4 and the item 1 in 2, where you can use it to scale vertically very fast. But it's also useful to be sort of like item 2 in Mega Man 2, where it's sort of an item you can ride and travel very fast horizontally as well. So you'll see it utilized throughout every single 8 Robot Master stage after Star once they get it, so that they can go hopefully through a lot of the sections quicker. Something you might also notice them do is sometimes it looks like they're running off the edge of the arrow, and that's actually done on purpose, because running off the edge of the arrow actually will sort of save a little bit of ammunition, because you only actually use ammo while you're standing on the arrow. So if you're constantly running off the edge, it'll slow down your ammo usage a little bit, and sometimes give you just enough ammo to use it again in another screen, because just because your ammo reads 0 once you're on an arrow, the arrow doesn't disappear. It will stay on screen even if your ammo reads 0. So there's ways to sort of manipulate that to keep more ammunition and get more uses of the arrow, basically. Unfortunate for Starman that his shield, as useful as it is, unfortunately we can shoot right through it if we stand close enough to him. So that's what you see Hypa doing right now, is he's standing very close to Starman so that he is putting his shots inside of the shield as opposed to allowing it bounce off the shield because he's too far away. So here you're seeing Primal doing it's kind of hard to see, but you see him running off the edge of the arrow there, and that saves that 1 ammo right there, so he can do that quick jump up to grab the additional ammo. So that's sort of what I was talking about, is utilizing that to your advantage so that you can try to get more arrow usage before running out. Other than that, in a typical Mega Man 5 run, you would be grabbing the letters to collect beat, because beat is very useful in the castle stages, but since we don't need beat for the 8 robot stages, all those letters become sort of useless, so you'll see the runners just skipping them, like that K there that you see Primal sliding past. there's no need to pick it up in this category since we're only beating the Robot Masters. And so that actually saves a little bit of time compared to the any % route through 8 robots. So it's actually kind of interesting to note that, because normally the runners would have to play through Crystal Man's stage, but we'll see Primal and probably Hypa as well go for an interesting little skip in Crystal Man's stage. Since they don't need the letter, they don't have to worry really about going through the stage and picking it up. So when Primal gets there in the next stage coming up, he'll be pulling off some shenanigans. Ooh, Hypa having to be a little bit careful in this last room of gravity, making sure he doesn't take too much damage here. There's about one full stage and a boss fight behind yet, but still nothing too far out of the way that he probably can still recover from. Mega Man 6 will be interesting. There's a lot of different kind of movement in that game, so the runners will have to be careful of their movement in that game. There's always, doesn't matter how good you are at that game, there's always somewhere where you can potentially die. So even if it's not made up in this game here, it's definitely possible in the last one. So here we go. Primal's entering Crystal Man. For whatever reason, there's a sort of memory corruption, I guess you could say here, and we're gonna sort of skip this stage here. So Primal needs to get his health down to basically nothing so that he can die in one hit, and then he's gonna use his arrow here to try to set up. Baron found a setup for this, and if you die on the frame that second enemy on the right there spawns, you notice that he doesn't have the bouncing ball sort of above his bottom platform. And that's how you know you get it, is if he spawns into the screen and you see that there's no ball over top of him, then you know you've gotten it. And for whatever reason, the memory is confused, I guess, at trying to spawn that at the same time that Mega Man dies. I'm guessing it has something to do with it. And so, for whatever reason, the game's just going to think for a little while. I think it's about 40 to 43 seconds or something like that. And then it's going to actually respawn him at the checkpoint room. So we're actually going to completely skip the stage of Crystal Man. And like I said, the reason that we can't do this in the any % route is we need the beat letter. So this is kind of a unique category in that you actually get to see this trick used, whereas normally in a Mega Man 5 run, you wouldn't see that done. So he's already through Crystal. I think it saves roughly about 10 seconds to do that skip as opposed to actually playing the stage. So it's not as big of a time save as you might think, just because you have to wait a really long time to respawn. But still, 10 seconds it's a pretty big time save, and now with the very easy arrow setup that Baron came up with, it's actually worth going for. Even if you're not overly great at these games, it's actually not that hard to do with the arrow setup. It's pretty consistent. Ooh, Hypa actually fired one shot a little early here, so he's going to have to finish off Gyro with Buster. At least he stayed low enough there. He was able to get the last 2 hits in, so... So Hypa will also now be going off to Crystal. Meanwhile, Primal's off to Napalm. Again, you'll be seeing him do some sort of walking off the arrow strats here, trying to conserve some ammunition for later in this stage, so you see him sort of doing that now. He's actually down an arrow now. He wants to have 2 arrows for this room, so he's going to have to take a hit here so that he can do that arrow ride over. So it loses a little bit, but he knows his backups in this game pretty well, so it's not going to be a big time loss. And then meanwhile, we see Hypa setting up that same skip that we saw Primal do. Ooh, gotta be careful, make sure he gets that kill first. Okay. So now Hypa's gonna have to take his bathroom break, pretty much, is what this is. He has to wait for these enemies to do their thing. Primal coming into this fight. This fight is kind of hard to execute because if you stand close to Napalm, he'll actually throw his Napalm bombs at you, and that's actually kind of laggy because when they explode, they generate some lag. So you actually don't want that. You want Napalm to fire the 3 missiles at you, and he only does that if you're further away from him. So you kind of have to manipulate him in a way so that he shoots the 3 missiles and you get close enough to him so that he jumps short instead of jumping all the way across the room at you. And then you have to get away from him fast before he picks his nest pattern to throw napalm bombs at you. So as easy as that fight looked, it's actually kind of tricky to get your movement correct, to jump between the missiles, and also get your hits in without shooting any into invincibility frames. So Hypa down with 4 robots, and Primal done with 5. So again, Hypa's still in striking distance. Any kind of death in 5 or 6 from Primal can definitely give him a chance to sort of get back into this race. Primal almost going for the letter there. It looked like maybe he just was in autopilot mode. Like I said, this is sort of his main Mega Man game, so had to almost rethink there and go, oh yeah, I don't need that. See, there's a mouse here coming up. We'll see if Primal can get him. Yep, Squeaks. Nicknamed Squeaks. Those mice actually have pretty small hitboxes, so hitting them is actually harder than it looks. They're actually pretty flat to the floor, so it's a little more difficult than you would think. If you're actually standing on the same level as those mice, you can't shoot them with a small lemon shot. You can only hit them with like a charge shot. Hypa gets through the cave room, very nice. He's got 2 arrows still as well, which he can use in the next room. Stone Stage, I think Stone Stage to me, death-wise, it's one of the safer ones. Like, there's not as many real pits to have to worry about falling into. It's not that bad, but it's actually one of the longest stages. I think it is the longest stage of Mega Man 5, so even though it looks like sometimes a lot of the, well, it almost looks like here like Hypa's caught up a little bit again and is made up some ground, but Stone being a really long stage will actually mean that it'll look like Primal gains that time back when he goes to charge. Again, seeing sort of that, getting close to Napalm to manipulate him to jump instead of throwing the Napalm bombs, and then getting away from him so he doesn't throw those napalm bombs. But unfortunately, Hypa did shoot a couple shots into some invincibility frames, so he did get a napalm bomb. But other than that, the fight was still pretty fine. It's not a lot of lag. It's very, very minor time loss, but in a category like this was very long, small things like that usually aren't going to be a factor, but as we get further into the tournament and the runners start to have PBs that are much closer together, we might see that become a factor a little more. But these 2 runners are actually both playing very well at the moment, so we'll see if Hypa can gain any more ground here. Primal has been playing very solidly pretty much since Mega Man 4 here, so hasn't been giving Hypa really any chance to catch up at the moment. Although his chicken room is having some issues a little bit here. Again, a lot of these mice, a lot of the chickens, so you gotta, since you can't mash, you do have to time your shots, like I mentioned earlier when they first started playing the game, and those chickens take 3 crystallized shots, so you kind of have to make sure. Oh, he's gonna switch to arrow here. Go for a ride. Very nice. He should have saved a little bit of time with that because he hadn't menued to Buster yet. So I think that might have saved him a little bit of time, maybe a second or so. Not a whole lot though, because he didn't get the full ride of it. But kind of a lucky drop. And Power Stone, pretty awkward weapon to use, but Primal's done it a lot of times, so he knows what he's doing. Does miss one shot there at the end, but not too critical. So there's sort of what I was alluding to earlier. Like you can see, because Stone stage is so long, it kind of looks like Primal gained a little bit of time on Hypa there, but it's just mainly because the stage is quite a bit longer. So Primal's only got one stage of Mega Man 5 left, and then he'll be off to the final game. Just wave, so see if everything goes well. There's a couple skips in this stage that he can do. The first being the bubble skip, which saves about 9 seconds if you execute it right. But if he falls and misses, he can lose quite a bit of time to just riding the bubbles normally, so hopefully he can get that. And then the other skip being the boat skip. Doesn't save nearly as much time, saves about maybe 1 second, but there is a risk of a soft lock on it too, so he has to be very careful if he does go for that to make sure he can jump into the screen transition before touching the floor so that he doesn't avoid the boat. But we'll see how these go. Here he goes with the boat, the bubble skip. Looks like he's good. Yep, alright, so that's the harder part. Got the 2 arrows set up here, we'll see if he can get it. Oof, just gets into the screen transition, so he's gonna get the max time save out of this stage, which is good. Since the game doesn't expect Mega Man to be able to get into this screen without the boat, it doesn't check for Mega Man's position, so you can actually walk off screen, and that's what he's done. He's sort of walked off screen, and then he's come back on screen, so it looks like he's invisible. He's taken Mega Man's sprite off the screen, but he can still fire and whatnot. You don't want to do that in the second half of the auto-scroller in the normal run, because you actually need the letter. So if you're off screen, you can't grab the letter. But since this is just 46 Robot Masters, he can do it again here if he'd like. We'll see if he actually does, or if he grabs the letter. Looks like he might actually play it. Hypa had a kind of unfortunate thing there where he got knocked off his arrow in that first screen, so losing a little bit of time there in that room. There we see Primal walking off the edge, but he is still technically there. Hypa getting into the Chargeman fight, and Primal coming into his final fight with Waveman. And then he'll be off to the last game. Primal has very low health here, though. He's going to have to be either very careful, or I hope he has an E-Tank. He doesn't, so he's looking like he's going to buster this fight. Oh, and he does take a death, so thankfully it's Mega Man 5. There should be no danger of a game over. And if Hypa can get through that, he might pick up a little bit of time if he can get through Wave without taking a death. We'll see. That's not a really big time loss because he did take the death pretty fast. But, you know, probably about 20 to 30 seconds at least, I would think. And he's done. So Primal's got one more game to go. So the tricky thing about Mega Man 6 is obviously the slide mechanic. Runners, like I alluded to earlier, they have to be careful to not try to jump out of their slide, because in Mega Man 6, you can't do that. You have to either cancel it by pressing A first, or by turning the opposite direction. So runners, when they come up to edges, usually you'll see they'll like stop sort of more abruptly to make sure that they can get a jump at the very edge of a platform. Primal's starting with Flame first. It's not really a slower route necessarily, but the Buster fight with Flame is a lot harder than with Wind. And having weapons in Wind doesn't really make it any faster. Like, you can have like weapons like Knight and stuff, but it's no faster to use those weapons than it is to do it with Busters. So he's not really going to get any advantage doing Flame first. It's just going to be a little bit tougher Buster fight, actually, because Flame likes to put little firewalls in his path, and they will reflect Buster shots. So Primal has to be very careful to make sure he gets his hits in. Having some issues there with that last little flame telly, but he does get past them finally. Ooh, Hypa looked like he was going to go for boat skip and ended up just sliding right into the boat, so better than a soft lock, that's for sure. Something also to note is those fire pits that are lit by those flame tellies and these little flamethrowers, if Primal dies, they don't go back to being oil. They actually stay lit until he either finishes the stage or he game overs. So it's kind of like an extra penalty. As you see there, Primal taking a death right near the end of flame stage. Now when he comes back to that flame pit, it will still be lit. So he's not going to be able to go into the oil at all in that section. So it's kind of like an interesting mechanic where deaths and allowing those things to light actually make your stage harder afterward. So again, this could be anybody's game still. If Primal starts taking a few deaths in 6, just because of some awkward movement, you know, sometimes that could give Hypa enough of a chance to come back into this. The fire itself is not laggier, but on the frame that the fire lights, there is some weird lag. There's like a lag spike that happens the moment that the oil lights on fire. But once the fire is actually lit and that goes away, then no, it's the same as if it's not. So again, showing, remember I was talking about like those little fire pillars that Flame Man brings up. So he has to put his his buster shots over top of that to hit Flame. So you can actually see that this buster fight is usually a lot more awkward and slower than the Windman one, which is why most people use the Windman route over Flame. So Primal's through his first 6 robot, and Hypa is finished Mega Man 5 and heading to his final game as well. So no, Flame First is not technically faster, no. A lot of people want to use the argument of then you can is things like Night Balls in Windman stage, but the amount of time that Night Balls save for you in Windman stage is unfortunately doesn't outweigh how long it takes to load the menu. Like just menuing to Night loses you more time than the actual weapon saves. So that's why the standard route is to go to Wind, because you actually really can't speed Windman stage up by having any weapons. So, and the Buster fight is much easier, so it just makes sense. And it also gives you the weakness for Flame, so you can kill Flame very fast. So it's really like a win-win-win situation, honestly, by doing Wind first as opposed to Flame first. Flame, the only, really, anything that could be considered a benefit for Flame first, it really isn't a benefit. It's a much harder route, and there's really no benefit to doing it. So if Hypa can get through Mega Man 6 here with no deaths, and if Primal takes a couple here throughout, you might see it a little bit closer. But the one bonus with deaths in this game is they are a little bit faster. You respawn a little bit quicker in 6 than the other 5 games. So even if Primal does die, like, it's usually not as costly in this game as it is in some of the other ones. Unless it's a very, very bad death, like in this screen where he is right now. This would be a bad spot to die. Oh, and speaking of, there it is. So, like I said, anything can happen. Race setting. In a race setting, anything can happen. I'd like to not take blame for that one, because technically by the time I had said it, he probably had already died. So, you know. But you can see how much faster that Windman Buster fight is, as Windman is never invulnerable, so as long as he doesn't fly really high up, Hypa can always get his hits in. So Primal does get on top of the bomb this time, and he does get into the door, so making it a little bit interesting, a little bit closer here. Less than a stage ahead now for Primal. And still lots of Mega Man 6 to go. Getting a pretty good pattern from Blizzard. Blizzard is one of the heavier RNG bosses of Mega Man 6. And only getting 1 roll is pretty good. Average usually is about 2 rolls. but every time Blizzard rolls, obviously you can't hit him. He becomes invulnerable, so you don't want to see those if you can. So again, going through these sections with the oil, Hypa trying to kill those flame tellies before they drop any fire so that they don't light the oil pits. Gets through that room very nicely. Primal coming into plant stage. Based on the difficulty of some of the strats he was doing in Mega Man 2 and 3, I'm guessing that Primal will probably not be doing plant forms, but ooh, Hypa falls into the reset pit, so he needs this flamethrower to actually shoot him here. There we go. Took a few tries there. Because unfortunately oil pulls you down, so you can't jump very high out of oil. Ooh, that's snipe out of midair. Hypa being a little careful there, and does get through, so definitely picked up some time on Primal there in flame stage without taking that death. But yeah, we'll likely see Primal probably switch to Buster once he gets to the plant forms. Flame's weapon is basically... The reason we want to go to Flame fairly early in this run is it's very, very strong. Flame's weapon does like basically 4 damage to everything. So for like those gorillas that you saw Primal shooting and mashing them down, they actually have 24 health. You have to hit them 24 times with the Buster, but with Flame you only have to hit them 6 times, so it's a much faster kill if you can use Flame. And there we see Primal switching to Buster for the platforms and the springs. It's a little slower, but it's much safer, because those platforms, the window to actually jump on them is pretty tight. You only have 4 frames to jump on them when they're not open. And if you're holding right or left, it actually drops to a 2-frame window, so it's a very, very short window to do that. Meanwhile, Hypa's into Blizzard now, so we'll see how his Blizzard stage goes, if he can make up some of that time that Primal lost to him with the death. Primal tried to set up into the middle of Plant's hitbox to get that walking glitch, but doesn't actually get it, so he's going to have a slower fight also. Blizzard's weapon is pretty laggy, so you notice like when Primal's trying to get his hits in, he actually tries to jump over the shield and then turn the opposite direction, because Blizzard appears from behind Mega Man. So that gets rid of a couple of the Blizzard snowflakes right away, and it doesn't allow them to lag the game for as long. Ooh. Hypa gets margarine pitted, but thankfully his movement was a little slow, so he didn't get the spikes. So Primal with 5 stages to go here, and Hypa with about 5.5, less than half probably. So it's been quite a big time shift between since the end of Mega Man 5 already, and not even halfway through 6. Make sure Hypa can get through this section. He does, so yeah, making up quite a bit of time on Primal there without taking that death. Let's see what kind of pattern he gets. 1 roll. Probably will get at least 1 more roll. He's got to be careful of his health. Ooh, 3 rolls. Watch out for these snowflakes. Oh, no, he's going to ski instead. Whew, okay. So that was a pretty scary fight. Blizzard can be a jerk sometimes, too. You saw that he can ski forward as well, and sometimes he'll just decide to ski right into you. So you kind of get yourself cornered with the strats in this fight. And if he's a jerk, he can ski right into you. But Hypa playing it very, very carefully, trying to hug that left wall, and it ends up being a very good decision so that Blizzard does not get that last hit in. So Primal less than a stage ahead, yeah, already. see what kind of Tomahawk fight he can get. Tomahawk is probably one of the harder Buster fights, but thankfully with Plant, he's not too bad. You can just take hits and pretty much stay close to him and get your hits in. He doesn't deal that much damage with his body. As long as you have a lot of health left over from the stage, you should be perfectly fine, and that's what you see Primal do. The one downside of doing that fight is that you have exact ammo, so if you do miss one Plant shot, you will have to finish the fight with a different weapon, which kind of sucks, but as long as you're careful with your hits, it shouldn't be an issue. So I don't know if Hypa goes for plant forms, but hopefully, regardless of if he does or not, getting through this plant screen is going to be pretty important to not die, since Primal was able to get through it without dying as well. Due to his ammo with Flame, I'm going to guess he's not going to do them, because he doesn't really have enough. So yeah, here comes the swap to Buster. Very probably wise decision here. And these little health drops are kind of nice too in that regard. When you are missing some health, you can get some of it back. So be careful to not miss any of these springs. Ooh, almost inside that fish's hitbox. That was kind of scary, but he's through, so good. No death for Hypa either. Typically, the roadblock for Mega Man 6 is the first 4 stages. Like, when you're doing runs of this game, the first 4 stages are kind of like the toughest part. And once you can get out of them, then usually the game gets a little bit easier. Tomahawk through to Centaur is usually a lot easier, but just even getting out of Blizzard and Plant alone, like those 2 stages, is usually just a relief. And Hypa has a little bit of a slower fight, sort of like Primal's too, but does get his kill, and only 4 stages to go for him. About 3 and a little bit for Primal. It's hard to sort of compare them right now because Yamato is a pretty short stage, so Hypa will get that time back when he gets to Yamato as well. Yeah, pretty nice Yamato fight there by Primal, so. This is definitely the closest race so far we've had in the tournament. I think this is the 4th race so far, so there's going to be lots of 46 Robot Master races coming up in the near future. So definitely, if you're interested in that, just watch carefully on Twitch. I believe there's also a schedule that has the upcoming races coming up, where you can see the times that they start. So Primal's going to probably go for a little skip here. It's kind of it looks a little scary because it looks like you're going to get crushed, but you kind of buffer you use the menu to sort of oh, he's not going to get it, unfortunately. He's going to die here. Oh, that was probably frame perfect, because usually when you miss your 3rd slide and you are in the standing animation, when you pause, you can't move for the first little bit, and the spikes come down and kill you. Incredibly lucky there by Primal. I'm really surprised. I almost never see that one. Like, I don't ever almost see that one survivable. So really, really, really fortunate. It's a pretty big time loss to die on that screen too, just because you go through quite a few screen transitions already at that point. Taking out a lot of slides to make that room a little bit safer. It's probably a wise choice. He's got a little bit of breathing room, so he can afford to do that. Takes that Mad Nerd room a little bit slower and gets his kills. Meanwhile, Hypa's into his Tomahawk fight. His HP's a little low, but he should be okay here. Yep. And Primal making his way through the bouncy castle room. Taking quite a bit of hits here, unfortunately. It's hard to make that room fast, because you kind of are at the mercy of the speed of those little bouncy floors and ceilings, but taking hits there is really the only way you can go slower. He took a few, which is unfortunate. Knight giving him a very nice pattern, though. Knight can be a jerk sometimes and jump all over the place, but that was a very nice pattern. Stayed on the ground. So 2 more stages for Primal here. Meanwhile, Hypa doing pretty much everything he can to try to catch up at this point. He hasn't made any large mistakes, which is good. But he's still probably about that full stage back. And in the end, if it doesn't change much here, it'll probably just come down to the fact of it's just sort of how unfortunate how his airman stage went. So Primal into probably one of the most fun speed stages of the 8 robots Centaur. The first screens I think are super fun to play and execute. Although he's got some slightly different strats here. He's using Tomahawk. Ooh, he's stuck on the spikes there. He's got to get off. That was kind of scary actually. His iframes almost wore off. His health is looking a little low compared to normal here too. So he needs to make sure if he's going to do any more of the deboosts that he plays it a little careful then in the fight. Looks like he's going to switch to Knight now and wait for the water to come back down. Ooh, Hypa again with low HP here. Oh, and he does take the death right before his shot hits, so that's kind of an unfortunate time loss for him. Might make this a little too hard to catch up now. Primal's getting pretty close to the end of Centaur, which is really Hypa kind of needs a death from Primal here, so this might be over now. Oh, Primal misses the edge, and he is gonna take a death though. Another fairly costly death as well, so giving Hypa a chance. He's giving Hypa a chance for sure. This is it's not over. He's gonna have to be very careful when he gets back to that room. There is some pretty weird lag in that room with the little Metroids dropping down. And so he has to be a little bit careful of his inputs. Make sure that his jump is from the right location and that he's not going to walk off that edge or miss by jumping too early like he did there. So almost did it again too. So he should be home free now in Centaur stage. There's nothing really else that can kill him. There's no pits or anything. Oh, Hypa getting spiked in Knight. So this Centaur fight, sort of the last thing that... Well, Primal does still have to play Wind, but Wind stage is not terribly difficult. So, should be fine. Ooh, he is getting flashed. Oh, Hypa with another death. And that's the game over. So that might be all she wrote, unfortunately, for Hypa, but we'll see. It's not really over for Hypa, really, because he does need to still try to finish as fast as possible. If there are ties in the pool play, a lot of it will come down to the race times. So it's important to still finish as fast as you can, even though he does have, maybe a loss here. To focus and finish as quickly as he can is still pretty important. Knight has definitely been a roadblock so far in the tournament. We saw last night. Who was it? Somebody took about 3 or 4 deaths here in Knight. I forget who it was. So it's not easy. There's some pretty tricky slides and jumps here if you want to go really fast. But it really all comes down to the runners, how comfortable they feel doing the strats. So you see, Primal does have some other weapons here where he can use to his advantage, but unfortunately, just menuing to Tomahawk instead of just doing these screens with Buster is where the time loss comes from. So it's kind of handy to be able to do this stage, I guess, with the other weapons. But like I said, it only really makes the stage maybe marginally easier. It actually really doesn't make it a whole lot better. And then you have to struggle with the whole flame fight too, which kind of sucks. So Hypa coming into his Nightman fight, and then he'll have one stage to go. Primal about halfway through Wind, a little bit over halfway through, so he's getting close to the end of his stage. And into this final fight, so it should be pretty much finished up here, I think. He does have the weakness for Wind, which is kind of nice. Just like Plant on Tomahawk, though, it's exact ammo, so he can't miss any shots. And there it is. So Primal finishes in first with a 155.57 according to RaceBot. So congratulations to him. Yeah, ultimately I think for this race, I mean, there were a few mistakes on both runners' ends, but I think Hypa struggled a little bit too long in air, unfortunately. And that was probably his biggest time loss there, so kind of unlucky, but that's what happens in a race. If you go for sometimes the faster strats, they can cost you more time than they save if you don't get them. So pretty solid execution though from both runners. They should both hopefully here get sub 2 hours, which is good times. Ooh. Hypa has to wait now for the ceiling to come back down. His health is a little low here, so I don't know if he's going to just deboost or if he's going to grab this health first. He is going to grab the health, yeah, okay. At this point, there's no reason really not to, because he's just got to finish on his own time, so speed really isn't as big of a factor anymore. Just getting through the stage without dying is the most important part. Ooh, okay, he's okay. Exit over the last waterfall screen. And he should be coming into his centaur fight, and for his final race time here, we'll see what it is. Centaur himself is actually a pretty easy boss fight, but you can get pretty unlucky if he teleports. With a good fight, you can get up to 3 teleports, and each teleport costs you about 2 seconds. Hypa's getting a very good pattern here. He got no teleports. That's the best pattern there. And there it is. He finishes in second with a 158.07 according to RaceBot. So still a decent time. And like we said, like even though it's technically a loss, it could still come back to be an important time when it comes to tiebreakers in the pool play when we're trying to figure out who's moving on for the brackets. So congratulations again though to Primal, and yeah, good race. Let me just take a quick look at the schedule here and see when our next one is. We've got a few more races coming up today still. I believe the next one is at 12 EDT, and that's going to be on Speedrun's live channel. So you'll have to go over to that channel for that one. The next 46 Robot Master race on this channel is going to be at 3:30 p.m. EST. So you can watch for that one. And then again, 7:30 on Speedrun's live. We're going to be bouncing between the two channels. So 7:30 p.m. EST, Speedrun's live has another one. And then again here at 10 p.m. EST, Speed Gaming's got one more. So there's still 4 more races coming up today for you to be able to catch if you're interested in more Mega Man. But just be aware that it's going to be bouncing between the 2 channels a little bit today. So I guess the next race will be in about 50 minutes on Speedruns Live for the 46 tournament. But yeah, that's it for me. I'm not sure. Are you going into anything right away here, Feasel, or are you cutting stream?
We'll probably take the stream down. Be back in just under an hour.
I'm gonna dip out of here. So thanks everybody for watching. Good job again, runners, and hopefully we'll catch you later in another race. Take care, everybody.